think as we go out to clients, again, on my side, we deal with institutions, so our clients are people, like Eaton Park and Pershing Square, Omega, and so with your clients, with my clients, we'd like to be offering something that is proprietary, that is unique, so we command their attention. Because if you're offering a product that's the same as anyone down the street is, then it's difficult to convince someone that you're a better stock picker. So, in this hypothetical scenario, we're now putting a syndicate together. And I've just picked out 3 major roles that we would see in a syndicate. And certainly, this would go for underwriting as well as placement, but traditionally there's a book runner or a lead manager and a series of other managers. And it's the book runner's responsibility to really carry the water, so to speak. It's that book manager who's going to do the due diligence and compliance, and probably more than anything else, it's up to that book runner to structure that transaction, to prepare the transaction investment materials, and finally to price and time the transaction for market. Now, they don't do that in isolation. Generally, sometime around this period, I worked on a lot of fairly large project financing deals for Nomura. And these deals ran anywhere between, let's say, about $100 million and about $2 billion. Now, as we were working on that transaction, we would start to pick up the phone and call our colleagues at other banks and talk to them about the transaction. We're looking at financing a project plan in the Philippines. We think it's going to cost about $100 billion. What do you think at Credit Suisse, at Deutsche Bank, right, at the old Lehman? And we would start to focus in on what that transaction should be like, how it should be structured, so that they can sell it to their distribution network, and we can sell it through ours. It's also the book runner and lead manager's role to really look at what the fees are for the transaction. Now, I know that most of you have never been in a fee negotiation, right? And we know that they go really smoothly, that everyone agrees with the first comment on fees. I should have said. And the first time it happens in my, well, let's say more than 30-year career, it will be a first time. Fees are never easy. It's the book runner's job to start to negotiate fees so that what you have is a willing syndicate. Everyone has to be compensated for their work in the transaction. And so the book runner is going to, along with the man, especially the lead managers, run a roadshow if required, and they're going to do together the allocation to the sales manager and the tracking of the book. Now the managers are working as the partners in the book, and there's a lot of fighting for, and jockeying for, where you're going to be on the book. Who's going to be at the center top? Who's going to be at the left? Who's going to be at the right? Who's going to be directly under the book runner? Are you going to be half a line underneath those? And then where are the other managers going to go? That's all part of the game that goes on. And finally, the sales agents are really the distribution arms and legs of the transaction. And by the way, they are probably compensated better than anyone else in the city. How would we do this? What would the sequence of events be from a mechanical standpoint? For those of you who've been through this process, you'll tell me that I left out a few hundred steps. And by the way, it's probably, I have my books on what I need to do from a compliance view at banks in terms of syndication, and there are thousands of steps and checklists. But in real brief, the first thing you have to do is source deals. Now, if there's an effective syndication mechanism within NIBA, And we can tell the world that we now can do not just a $5 or $10 million deal, but we really can execute on a $10, $20, $30, $40 million deal. And that we have expertise in a certain number of sectors, because the larger the deal grows to, the more sector-specific the talents need to be in order to get the deal and execute it. So we need to get the deal flow behind it. If your experience is anything like mine, if you can raise capital, the deal's come. Just a show of hands, they tell us at presentation school we should always do this. How many people have been at the last Rodman conference or a Rodman conference? Shelley, you've been to a Rodman conference. How many companies present at a Rodman conference? 800. Okay. How much did they pay to be there?
Some a lot, some nothing, some a little.
Those who paid nothing paid blood with the engagement agreement they signed with Rodman.
I would have to agree.
Okay. I would submit to you that if we can put a syndication mechanism together, and we define it, and we can get it out, and I've met some of you here, and I have no doubt that there are firms that have already done book running at this meeting. So we go out to sponsors, people like Hanover, and I work with Jim enough to know that he magically makes deals appear. There are how many firms within NIBA?
There's in the several hundred.
Several hundred firms within NIBA. If the word goes out to the local private equity venture attorney, we were just talking about someone at Holmes Robert, I can say if Rich knew that we were a source of this type of fundraising, that he certainly would flow deals to do that, of course. KPMG and the other auditing firms, there are a variety of consultants out there. I don't think that is a question of the shortage of quality deals. And I don't think that there is a question, knowing my colleagues at the Roths, at the Jeffries, that we would have trouble competing for deals. The next thing is, someone has to vet the deals. In our experience, as I said, we probably pick up 2 for every 100 companies who have submitted some sort of applications. We don't want to waste our time and spend a lot of time with deals that we really should never undertake or that will never get done. So there has to be some sort of vetting process that is really a key part of this entire syndicate structure. The book runner, as I said before, is now going to go out and they're going to do the critical due diligence to make sure that this is something that really will flow. Because if that's not done, the entire process is in jeopardy, and you're only as good as your last bad deal. Talk to the people who worked on a lot of the China deals. Now, the book runner will work on the structuring, the terms, the documentation, and the packaging as we start to work on these deals and syndicate these deals. And if we work in a certain limited subset of sectors, we will find the documentation to become easier and easier and easier. And our documentation will start to have a look and feel as distinct as you would find from Goldman and Merrill and Credit Suisse. Now, sitting together, whoever brought the deal, the sponsor of the deal, it could be NIBA, it could be a Hanover, whoever is bringing in the deal, and the book runners sit down during the course of this, and they're forming up the syndicate. They're making the phone calls, and we'll talk about phone calls in a second, and calling up and describing the deal. They've probably put together a summary deal sheet at that point to really highlight the summary of the company. Here's the deal, right? And now you've gone out to these people and they're going to come back and say, we're real interested in this. And so now you start to form the syndicate up, and you're starting to have a really clear idea of what your real capacity is, right, to raise capital. Now, in fact, you may have thought that you could raise 50. It turns out that it's more like 30. Now, and you sit with the client and say, you know, we think a more reasonable number is 30. We can put an oversubscription in there, but we think it's 30. We'd like to hold it.